By 1995, Saddam's continued survival became a political liability to Bill Clinton. And he was coming up for re-election in 96, and he turned to the CIA and said, get rid of Saddam by the summer of 1996. I need that man gone. And the CIA worked with British intelligence. They brought in somebody named Iyad Allawi. Might be a name familiar to people. He was, for a period of time, the interim prime minister of Iraq after the American occupation. Before he was interim prime minister, however, he was a paid agent of British intelligence and the CIA. And he worked with them to orchestrate this coup d'etat that required them to recruit people on the inside of Iraq to be ready to take out Saddam, but you needed a trigger. And the trigger was a UN weapons inspection that I helped organize. We thought we were going after the concealment mechanism, but it turned out that the CIA was setting us up so that we would go to facilities that housed Saddam's security. We would be blocked. It was anticipated they would block us. And then when we withdrew, there would be a military strike that would decapitate the security of Saddam. The one place that we wanted to go to, the 3rd Battalion, we weren't allowed to. The CIA said, don't worry about that. We know those guys. They're not bad. And they were supposed to rise up and take Saddam out. Well, the Iraqi intelligence service was very effective at infiltrating this coup. They wrapped it up, and nothing happened in terms of getting rid of Saddam, except one thing. The Iraqis were fully aware of the role played by the CIA in infiltrating UNSCOM and using UNSCOM for own devices. And the ultimate tragedy of this is that from that point on, every time a UN weapons inspector went into Iraq, somebody with a blue hat, they weren't viewed by the Iraqis as somebody who was trying to disarm Iraq. They were viewed by the Iraqis as somebody trying to kill their president, and they were right.
When did you learn about this?
We always knew about regime change. I mean, when I first came in, we knew about regime change. In terms of the infiltration, some people say it's my fault because I'm the guy that brought in the character I call Mo Dobbs and the special activities staff, the covert operators of the CIA. We used them in 1992, we used them in 1993, because it's tough to do inspections in Iraq. They're not necessarily the friendliest people in the world when you're trying to go to a site that they don't want you to get in. And you can't have a bunch of thin-necked, geeky scientists trying to do this job. You need guys...
Are you talking about New Yorkers?
No. But you need guys with thick necks and thick arms, and the CIA had plenty of these guys who could do logistics, they could do planning, they could do communications in austere environments. So we used these guys, and we used them in June. The problem came afterwards when we started doing follow-up inspections. First of all, the Iraqis would come to me, and they would say, Mr. Ritter, what are you doing? You're supposed to be an inspector, and yet you're doing all this bad stuff. We know about the CIA's coup attempt, and I'm going, what coup attempt? We know what happened in June. What happened in June? And suddenly we start inspecting sites, and I see documents that start sending off signals in my head about, oh my gosh, the unit the CIA didn't want us to go to was the unit that was liquidated by Saddam Hussein in the aftermath of the failed coup, because that was the unit that was trying to take out Saddam. And suddenly the light goes off, and you're sitting there going, we've had the wool pulled over our eyes. We've been used. We were used by the United States, though, and they're the most powerful nation on the Security Council that we as inspectors work for. So how do you turn to your boss and say, hey, you've used us? We won't tolerate that. Well, you can't do that. What you have to do is continue to plod forward and just redouble your efforts to maintain the integrity of a process that tragically had been terminally corrupted by that point.
So, let's see. We've got the Clinton administration looking really good here. What I always say, when I do speeches, I always start by saying the bad news is, let's see, now there's 1,190 days left of the Bush presidency. And the good news is tomorrow morning there'll be one less. And so the question is, so if Clinton wasn't so good, where are we now?
Well, I mean, I'll start off, and I want to highlight that point that Clinton wasn't so good. There's a lot of talk today in the Democratically controlled Judiciary Committee about going after the Bush administration for crimes, for lying to Congress, and et cetera. And, I'm all in favor of that. Bring on the indictments. But don't stop with the Bush administration. If you want to have a truly bipartisan indictment, take it down and you indict Madeleine Albright, you indict Sandy Berger, you indict every person on the Clinton administration that committed the exact same crime that the Bush administration has committed today. Lying during the course of your official duty. That's a felony. That's a high crime and misdemeanor. That's language in the Constitution that triggers certain events like impeachment. So let's not just simply turn this into a Bush bashing event. This is about a failure not only of the Bush administration, but of the United States of America. And we have to look in the mirror and recognize that what all the Bush administration did is take advantage of a systemic failure on the part of the United States as a whole, a failure that not only involves the executive, but it involves the legislative branch, Congress, whether they're prone or supine, whatever you want to say. Congress has abrogated its responsibilities under the Constitution, and they've abrogated it for years. Then there's the media, and yes, we can turn this into a media bashing event, but you know what? The media only feeds the American people the poison they're willing to swallow. And we, the people of the United States of America, seem to want our news in no more than 3-minute chunks with sound bites of 30 seconds or less, and it can't be too complicated. And so what we did is allowed ourselves throughout the decade of the 1990s to be pre-programmed into accepting at face value without question anything that was negative about Saddam Hussein's regime. And this made selling the war in Iraq on the basis of a lie the easiest task ever faced by the Bush administration.
There's always the argument that one virtue of what we did, no matter how bad it is, we got rid of a very bad dictator. What do you know, I have my answer to that. What's your answer to that one?
Well, be interested to hear what your answer is. But, look, that invokes the notion of the ends justify the means. I mean, that's basically what we're saying here is that who cares about the lie? Who cares about the WMD? You know, we got rid of a bad guy. The ends justify the means. And I have to be frank. If there's anybody here who calls themselves a citizen of the United States of America and you endorse the notion of the ends justify the means, submit your passport for destruction and get the hell out of my country. Because this is a country that is founded on the rule of law as set forth by the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution that the men and women who serve us swore an oath of allegiance to, the Constitution that our government, every government official swears an oath of allegiance to, and it's about due process. Democracy is ugly. Sometimes it doesn't work as smoothly as we want it to. But if you're sitting here and saying that when it comes to Saddam that the ends justify the means, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? And you can't tell me that it's only going to stop here. It's about the rule of law. It's about the Constitution. And if we wanted to get rid of Saddam Hussein, then we should have had a debate, discussion, and dialogue about the real reasons and not make up some artificiality called weapons of mass destruction.
This is not Plato's Republic. I mean, Scott. and there are a lot of realities. There are a lot of give and take on all these issues. For example, I always joke, and I think I mean it. The one thing Bill Clinton did that strikes me as remarkable is he was the first American president since World War II to actually bomb white people in Kosovo. So there is some good. He isn't as bad. It's just the real issue for me in this in the Bush administration and the ease with which they move from the attack on 9/11 into an invasion of Afghanistan, and let me assure you, the whole story of that, I'm doing work on it, but the whole story in that isn't as simple. The idea that you're just going to go after all the Taliban, wasn't that clean a decision. There was a lot of give and take that we didn't see publicly, but the ease in which we moved into the war in Iraq does strike me as getting at the fabric of democracy, because we literally were taken over, I think. I think it's not an exaggeration to say, by 8 or 9 neocons, a cult, if you will, and we were taken over, and there was, for all of your talk about, and I know you mean it, and I know there are many people who served in the military who share your view and are just as vibrant about it as you are, but yet, the military has been totally docile. We haven't had one senior officer go public. As we can trash the Congress all we want, and we'd still be ahead of the game. The bureaucracy, the federal bureaucracy, we saw an awful lot of acquiescence. The press has been. This is, I think, history will judge. This is one of the low points of the response to Bush will be a low point for the American press corps.